I'd like to start the October 13th meeting of the bar and call to order. To begin, I'd like to read a statement. Last Tuesday, the mayor called to inform me that he was unilaterally removing me as chair because of how I handled the application for Hoffman Castle. He did not consult the trustees, he does not have the power to remove me, and I am not resigning. My appointment is a trustee matter requiring a vote. It is entirely inappropriate for the mayor to unduly influence this bar to approve illegal alterations against our design guidelines. He ran on doing the opposite. A dinner party was hosted on Saturday at the home of an applicant with open litigation against the town. The mayor attended the bar meeting the following Monday for said applicant, in which two bar members in attendance at said party inexplicably aligned with his viewpoint and are conveniently absent today. He bullied me to resign the following Monday because I upheld the design guidelines. The same rules apply to everyone. I will not be bullied into resigning. My term is 5 years, yours is 2, Mr. Mayor. Here are letters of support from each and every meeting I've led as chairman. I will submit them to the trustees on Wednesday. I encourage public feedback on going against design guidelines and approving vinyl windows, as well as the mayor's inappropriate conduct. This is not the Tuxedo Park of yesteryear. Unequal treatment and backroom dealings will not be tolerated. The rules apply to everyone equally. If you're watching this at a later time, please feel free to bring your concerns to our next meeting via Zoom. Thank you for your time. It is a privilege to serve this community. And with that, let's get started. Our first applicant is unable to join us. Just so we can keep things moving along, we've communicated with their lawyers the remaining items to get this approved. We need a plan showing where the AC units will be centralized and properly installed to code, and that they're the correct sizing for the house. Since our last meeting, the applicant has provided a receipt from Home Depot showing that the windows installed were vinyl and not the design guidelines. Those need to be replaced with wooden windows per design guidelines. And the approval for the generator is pending a sound enclosure, just so it's to 69 decibels as per the manufacturer's specification. Am I forgetting anything that we need to get that moving along?
I believe some of those things are subject to a vote at the full BAR. Though.
I'm happy to bring them when the
I don't think they can just be issued as a directive in that way.
I'm not issuing a directive. I'm repeating our last meeting with the applicant in which she asked more time for these items.
Yes, but the things that you're enumerating were not voted on. So
yes, they were. You could review that video if you'd like to.
I don't believe we had a vote on the windows.
Would you suggest we approve them?
I think we should circle back when the applicant is in attendance.
Happy to do so.
Good.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to move on to the next applicant, Nelson for 117 Tower Hill Road. We all had a chance to, did you get a chance to see? Thank you. Same manufacturer for an actual spec number?
No, I think she specified Black Forest, which is what is on the right side.
Okay,
of the
so
picture
what
there.
we're specifying is the Black Forest finish. This is a natural wood product that has been treated with heat and then, and what was the heat and tongue oil in a traditional application by
and more
UPF
sustainable
Edge.
than the initial sample that she
Correct.
provided
It was
us.
more sustainable and had a more traditional wood pattern as opposed to the char.
Mhm.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Wonderful. All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. Approved. Okay, next item, we have the Pays on Tower Hill, reviewing the second set of soffit molding samples. And I'm sorry, before I move on, I'd like to open to public comment on any of the first two items. Anyone on Zoom? Okay, moving on to item 3. reviewing the soffit samples. Did you get a chance to see them?
I did.
I did as well. Did you have any feedback for the applicants?
It was a big improvement, I
I
felt.
thought so.
I don't know if you felt the same way. I mean, in all honesty, I'd hoped for a greater simplification yet. I found that at the bottom half of the scaling was great,
Right.
and greatly simplified. It's what the three of us and I think maybe the other board members discussed. I myself had wanted less of an interior molding effect, the layering up, one mold and many layers to be out within sequence. To me, looked a little bit more like an interior detail and exterior detail. So I was hoping for a more simplified, more brutal sort of exterior feel. Honestly, it was a great improvement, and if the two of you feel that that's sufficient, I'm happy to sign off on it. I would, in my ideal world, love to see something more simplified yet at the base of the total molding.
I agree with simplifying the base. It is something I feel comfortable approving. I think they've really moved in the correct direction on that.
Could you have provisional okay on with the proviso of a simplified?
I
Base
think
practice.
existing is fine.
Okay.
But I agree. I just want to, I know that.
I'm happy to approve. If
I
you feel
also
good.
think the scale is much better. I like the placement of it as compared to the first two samples that we saw.
Mhm.
So I think that, they've taken a lot of steps in the right direction, and I think throughout
Agreed.
this process too. So
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable approving.
Sure, okay, I am
Okay.
too.
I think so too.
It's a big improvement.
Certainly. Okay, in that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve. I have a second.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. If there's no public comment, we'll move on to the next applicant, Bartlett at 161 Continental.
Are these ones?
Copies of what we submitted to Joe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then assuming you see these, but maybe not.
You can share if you want.
No, I have. We also did reading for our accounts for landscape related.
Mhm.
So the landscape architect is here,
Wonderful.
and we have more images of the area, particularly of concern. So that's an
Thank you.
additional thing.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you, thanks.
Where would you like to begin?
Since you haven't seen it, if you don't mind, I'll walk through, because we have
That'd be a
presented
great reminder.
before. It was many months ago.
Yeah.
Life got in the way. But we're back. The Bartletts are here, Carrie and Richard, the homeowners.
Hello again.
Carrie Fowler is the project architect for my office, and Connor O'Brien is the landscape architect.
Thank you all for coming.
Continental Road, the main house is this piece here. Again, to give you a little history, the original house was built in the 1890s and was located on the lake. And it was moved to this location in the early part of last century. We suspect, and only because it's through observation, I'm not a historian, but through observation of the house, this portion, which is the front and the porch, which we'll show you pictures of it later, but that is the original portion of the house. This is an addition subsequent because you can tell from the inside and that all the details, the moldings, the doors, the windows are slightly different than the other part of the house. And the portion that we're going to remove is much later. It houses now the kitchen and some rooms upstairs. So this piece is the piece, again, not original, that we're going to remove. It's not visible from the street. So this is the portion of the house that we suspect is original. There's also a house when you're driving in from Tuxedo, when you look up the hill.
Oh, right.
There's a house that's very similar. So we suspect that this was actually all an open porch all the way through. This we're not touching. So this is what you see from the street. This is the piece that we suspect was added on when they moved the house, because the detailing inside of this piece is completely different than this piece. This is the back, which is clearly added on, strange. There's this beautiful wall that continues, a retaining wall that takes you from the driveway, but actually, this site, typical very steep. So there's a retaining wall that actually bifurcates the property. The old addition here is actually sitting on this retaining wall, so the retaining wall is inside the garage, which is quite moldy and disgusting. So our proposal is really to take this whole piece off the house and rebuild it. New portion is here. This is the piece that we're adding on. So it's not an insignificant renovation, we realize that, but it's, again, not visible from the street. And we're actually adding on a enclosed screen porch at the existing terrace. So existing living room, listing dining, listing sitting rooms are not changing. This is the location of the kitchen, but it's 4 small rooms at the moment.
Is the footprint remaining the same, or
Say again,
is
sorry?
the footprint remaining the same?
It's actually getting slightly smaller, because this, right now, we're actually moving the house away from this is the wall. We're moving the house away from the wall, both to get some airspace, but also to actually connect the front and the back of the property. So you're gonna be able to walk along the wall through to the backyard.
Wonderful.
There is a second-story portion existing. We're actually adding on a master bedroom suite into the new portion. Sort of a little out of sequence, but sort of important. We had a conversation the last time. Ethically, morally, Richard and Carrie are really interested in introducing solar panels to the house. We did, in the months since then, did a whole bunch of research. There is lots of research and concepts of solar shingles, but when you actually follow up on them, they don't really exist for the market yet, so that's not really a possibility here. We are planning to redo, the roof now is asphalt shingles, needs to be replaced. So we are proposing, as part of this renovation, to redo the entire roof in cedar shape.
With the panels sort of floating over the cedar shake.
Panels floating over it, so this is the real elevation, but we actually consulted in an engineer to do this. So this is the pattern of the panels, but they're all located on roofs that are not visible from the street.
Right.
And is that a flat section of the roof?
No, they're actually on the sort of
Oh.
the least steep sections of the gambrel roof. But again, not visible. The shingles would have been a brilliant solution, but it's not going to happen in our lifetime.
I share your frustration on the availability of these. They have
When
beautiful
you
slate
actually
ones, but
contact them and Google them.
Yeah.
They give you all this information and then they connect you to solar panels. That's the follow-up. That's all.
So
there is.
two questions. So B and A, that's facing sort of southwest or south, like what are those two directions?
This is, I think this,
Driveway's that way, right?
right, the driveway's coming here. So Continental Road is on the opposite side. This is, I believe this is south and
Just
west.
straight south.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, there's two immediate thoughts. One, we'd love to see an asphalt roof taken away and a better, more traditional material. That is fantastic news. Two, it is not currently in the design guidelines for solar panels. However, that's something that we as a board are working on and creating new guidelines for that. I suspect by your next meeting that we'd be able to give a direct vote on that, but it currently isn't in the guidelines.
But neither is it prohibited in the guidelines.
Oh, exactly.
So I think it's
yeah.
very good to bring it up even on a case-by-case scenario
Right.
like this.
Yeah.
I, for one, am wholeheartedly in support of it. My
Likewise.
main concern, and you've already addressed it, is can it be seen publicly? If it can't, and it has efficacy because it's southern facing and or whatever, southwest, whatever. And my second question, I didn't get a chance to ask, is can these things that are floating over, can they be taken off with minimal intervention down the line? Should someone not want them? You know, should it sell?
Yeah, the way,
How complicated would that be?
the way we have installed them in the past, obviously not in Tuxedo Park, where we've installed them in the past in on cedar roofs. There's
Mhm.
actually a stanchion that they use that actually is placed structurally to the roof. They shingle over it, so they're stanchions that hold these pieces.
I see.
So the stanchions are actually underneath the cedar roofs, but the panels themselves float slightly above it.
Right.
So it actually allows the cedar.
So
there
there'd be
is cedar
minimal,
below.
there would be minimal intervention. If
Right.
you ever wanted to take it off for
Right.
resale, you have to re-roof certain sections, but not the entire.
No,
roof.
100%. Right.
To me, that's very meaningful as well. So the fact that it can't be seen, it can be revisited.
And it can be repaired.
Yeah.
Very easy.
And I think this board has encouraged solar panels where it's not going to make a big impact on anyone's view shed.
Yeah.
And we know the world we're living in. We know that climate change is very much real. And so any intervention, as far as I'm concerned, as one member of this 5-member board, is to be commended and encouraged without delay.
And
Agreed.
the road behind, the road behind, is there a road behind the house?
There is a road quite a distance behind. There's about an acre and a half
Okay.
of wooded property
It
behind.
separates.
Like it's this. Ledge Lane is
Yeah.
quite a bit higher than this, but this is all heavily wooded.
So from an elevation, so it wouldn't be visible.
I don't,
essentially.
I mean, in the dead of winter, I will promise you that you won't see them, but,
You mean
I-
from Brian Caldwell's road above, right? But that's one
Right,
person,
one house.
and it's quite wooded, so
it's,
you.
right, it's extremely wooded, and the
Median.
landscape plan is not to change that dramatically at all.
Yeah.
So that's the landscape, the solar concept.
Thank you.
When we presented the last time, by and large, the reaction was very positive. What we have done in the interim is refine it architecturally and also add back some details that we were talking about in terms of specificity. The back, we've simplified the back because architecturally, I think there was too much going on. And you didn't mention there was too much going on, but there was too much going on. But there was also a few details that I think were intrinsic to the house and repeated several places that we did add back in. There is for lack of a better architectural word, an eyebrow detail above all the second floor windows, which you can see here. It's
Yeah.
actually it's this very subtle buildup of shingles. They're about 3 shingles thick that actually give this little eyebrow motif on only on the second floor windows. So in the new portion, we are going to repeat that so that it does maintain an existing detail. This is modified.
So the existing section that you're proposing changing is up to the left of here, where it has kind of the hip roof.
This piece is brand new. This is the new screen porch. So all of this is being
That's
adjusted.
more so fitting the style of the home than what's currently there.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with the shingling detail. I think you changed that maybe from the last.
We didn't
meeting
have that, and we
had.
did, yeah, that was,
And I love that it's carried through from the original part of the house on this side, the shingling detail. on the
because
side.
yeah, it exists on these 2 windows, so we're gonna repeat it here and in the front as well. That's that. This is proposed as a screen porch. We are proposing, because we don't want to make the 2 living room and dining room really dark, we're proposing a glass roof, a slightly sloped glass roof behind this. I think from the property, when you're on the property, because it's so shallow, you won't actually see it, but that way it maintains it as an outdoor covered space.
Terraces downwards. You're
Yes,
looking up.
quite significantly.
Yeah.
But that way it enables the interior rooms not to be really, really dark.
In Orange
It's
RE, essentially.
Excuse me?
In Orange RE,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. Except this is green.
It's a beautiful streamlining and modification of what we already loved.
Yeah, I agree.
The other detail that we hadn't focused on particularly, but is also very much part of this house, and there are other houses in Tuxedo Park, we've noticed it, is this
I love it.
sawtooth detail between the second and it also divides in some places the clapboard from the shingle.
Mhm.
We're going to repeat that as well.
Beautiful. Wow.
And we're also going to keep it, because the interior facade of the screen porch is going to be maintained as is existing. So that sawtooth detail will be in the screen porch.
Oh,
So
that's
you'll
lovely.
keep that throughout. This is the new garage elevation.
I think that's a fantastic idea to lower the footprint of the home and to get that wall.
And this,
out
yeah, you
there.
see
I'm
this-
sure,
this-
I can't imagine the moisture you're getting.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Right.
It's just sort of the detail of the back. What we were trying to do, but we're also trying to give more grandeur and height to the screen porch. But there's a very pretty entablature detail that unites the entire front of the facade. So we're using that as the inspiration for the screen porch piece. I'm going to turn this over to Connor for a minute, but just to give you the benefit of what the biggest comment was. The house is quite, Continental Road at this point is quite a distance below the house. There's a really quite unattractive, that's being kind, retaining wall. And so the biggest comment from the board the last time was how to deal with this retaining wall, because it would be an improvement for the whole neighborhood. So that's one of the things, besides the sort of re-landscaping of this whole piece, that Summerhill Landscape has spent a tremendous amount of time on. I don't know, Connor, to explain how we're achieving this.
So, yeah, I guess like this section kind of shows clearly the view from the street is, it's possibly 20, 30 years ago, the trees that were planted screened the wall, but over their lifespan, you know, they've grown taller and defoliated in the lower sections. So the wall has become, you know, visible from the street. So our idea is to kind of renaturalize this edge with smaller trees and shrubs, mostly native species, American holly, hemlock, some serviceberry and mountain laurel, and to do it in a non-linear setting, so it'd be more naturalized. So it'd really feel similar to the rest of the beautiful environment here, and just make this wall disappear, which is the end.
It's a beautiful solution, and the only tweak that I might sort of float would be the Tupelo is great, the American holly is great, and loves dry shade. I would rethink the Japanese cedar and think about white or red cedar. I forget which. I think they're both indigenous, but you might check.
Yeah.
I think red cedar for sure is
Yeah.
red is the indigenous one.
Virginia, yeah, juniper, Virginia.
Okay, yeah, exactly. And hemlock we love, except so does the adelgid, and I don't know when we're really going to get that solved. And I wonder whether it's good money after bad. Just sort of, do you want to open yourself up to that constant upkeep and mitigation, or is it easier just to? And serviceberry, I think, is a great, very wildlife friendly solution. Maybe also elderberry, and so.
Yeah, we can definitely widen the plant selection for this area.
But the general gist of what you're presenting is beautiful, amazing.
That'd be great coverage for that wall. I think Christopher Gow will go wild when he sees it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. It was commissioned by Christopher Gauss,
Sure.
but he would probably echo some of those things that I just said.
And then, I want Connor to walk you through what's.
Oh, that'd be great if we could
Yeah.
see, just to get an idea of its entirety.
So I guess, you know, we're right now, there's a singular steps coming up the center of the stairs. of the pool, which is slightly off center from the house. So with the new alignment, the idea is to create a new step down, kind of tie into the existing retaining walls. And it's kind of the language of Tuxedo Park is these beautiful landscape retaining walls and wrap them around to create more of a flatter lawn area here for the family. And also and provide additional planting, more structured planting between the two zones. So one of the second things is right now there's just a grass pathway along the southern side yard. So the idea is to create a kind of informal flagstone pathway to bring you around to a new patio which has outdoor dining set up, as well as bring you around the perimeter of the house, and in this section to what is kind of like quite a damp retaining wall, but a space that's opened up to create a kind of small external fireplace tucked into the wall, which will dry up, brighten up the area, and a new side gate with a simplified area for the air conditioning units. So position of this area.
A lot of these were part of the design from the last iteration that we all felt made so much sense.
Right, it was really the wall that became the real.
A couple tweaks, yeah.
And
there's a
one
little-
of the board members was suggesting much more modern
Mm.
paving.
I think we all were
The
actually, yeah.
suggestion was,
Yeah.
like,
But that's
um,
beautiful.
Yeah, that is
Which
beautiful.
is very pretty. Right now, it's actually, should be a major connection from front to back, but it's actually quite grassy and muddy.
Muddy,
So,
right.
because there's a lot of shade there.
This year especially.
Yes. I think it engages the site very well.
Yeah, it's the new normal, right?
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, I think it engages the site very well. I really don't have feedback on that. Section N is where the air conditioner units will be. Are those like walls on either side?
You're gonna be fencing.
Okay, so it'd be like a shield and you don't see them. Okay, great.
And it's basically creating a little service yard.
Mhm. Yeah, wonderful. Do we have any feedback on landscaping?
On the lower part of those retaining walls, it looks like right up against the pool, is there fencing existing there or new fencing proposed?
Yes.
It's for the pool.
Yeah.
It's used to leave it pool.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the, right now the pool fence tucks into the house at this point because it touches the wall. So by pulling the house back from the wall, we're losing that connection enclosure point. So the idea is to create an enclosure area itself.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you're engaging with the site and using the old walls and bringing new life to it. I mean, I don't really have feedback, but I think it's fantastic. Do you have any thoughts on
I
improvement?
concur.
I think it
100%.
looks beautiful.
Surely.
Very, very done.
In terms of elevations for the house proposal, do you need anything further? I mean, this is pretty extensive on the detailing. I mean, I feel satisfied with that.
We did bring for John the specs for the windows and,
Oh, perfect, yes. Windows, doors.
Shingles.
the shingles are precision, which is of the best quality, but not shake. When we drove around,
Mhm.
most of the shingles tend to be much more refined as opposed to the real hand split. They're much more refined. So it's the precision shingles are some of the best quality fancier shingles. The windows are the Marvin Ultimate, but the wood versions from the outside.
Okay.
And one of the other board members last time asked a question about the color of the house. And the determination is to stay Took a
Wonderful.
long time to get that kind of light, so we're down to.
Good to hear.
Not
And-
yellow, but depends on the day. It's not
Wonderful.
white.
And we'll just be matching trim and windows tonight. Wonderful.
We are, to be very clear,
Mm.
we are not proposing to do the diamond.
Will there be muntins at all or just,
They're
okay,
just- they're
rectilinear?
They were square, kind of matching the style on the
Right.
lower
Got
level
it.
and
Got it.
continuing
Got
up.
Yeah, yeah,
It matches if you look on the original front side of the house where
right,
they
right.
keep that style.
Sounds good.
I mean, I was interpreting the guidelines as complementary, but not trying to be replication.
I think it's a nice effect to mix it, yeah.
I think it's certainly an improvement on what's there, and as long as we're moving upward, that's always the goal. Yeah. So as far as what's before us today is the approval for the alterations at the rear of the house. I mean, do you feel comfortable taking a vote on that with
Sure,
this level?
sure.
I do.
Can I just ask, what style fence will
Yes.
go around the pool area? Now that the fence will not meet up with the house. Is there, what,
I think that the intention was, some of the fence now is the hidden fence that's in the landscaping.
Mhm.
Right now is just a black chain link fence. I think there is a fence in the front that's a very pretty white picket fence. The visible fence, I think, would be a white picket fence similar to what we have. But we're not gonna do that to the, where it's not seen, but it's interspersed with the landscape. Unless you object.
It is existing. What do we?
It's a black,
The deer fencing?
I mean, that, I
Yeah.
find it a very invisible solution.
Yeah,
and-
especially when it's black.
That would
You know, it's
be-
got
that-
rigidity.
Disappears.
That's
Yeah.
only where it is in the trees and all that.
It's
Mm.
invisible
It
anyway
would
by
disappear,
virtue of
yeah.
where it is, but then it's
And plus,
also-
you're doing all the extra landscaping around it to really hide that and give privacy. I don't see it being an issue. I assume the one going across, you're going to do like a deer fence or something that's a little less visible. Okay. Anyway,
You
that's
mean
fine.
along Continental on this side?
No, I mean bisecting the yard across
Oh,
the
I see.
pool.
Oh, right.
So it'd be like
Sure.
a little less
Yeah.
visible from
Between the
house.
hedging.
Exactly.
Just spirited it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that. John, you have the spec sheets?
Here they are.
I didn't.
I can send it.
Sure, well,
Send you the PDF.
Let's divide and conquer.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it's this red one, circle at the top? Okay. So number one, blue label, premium, premium grade, 100%. Yeah, great. I'm happy with that.
Mhm.
I love the detailing you guys are doing too. That's phenomenal. And then Marvin Ultimate. Okay, wood double hung interior. Ultimate collection. 6 species. 19. Fully wood. Okay, great. I'm comfortable making a vote. We have all the information we need. Okay, so I'd like to make a proposal to approve the alterations of the rear of the house for the Bartlett property at 161 Continental Road per the plans. Is there a title on this? By the Summerhill presentation on October 23rd, entitled Tuxedo Landscape, sheets T000, A001, A101, A102, A103, A200, A201, A202, A203, L1.0, L2.0, and as outlined in the landscaping detail. In front of me, I have the blue label number 1, 100% heartwood cedar shingles. And then I have specs for the Marvin catalog from the Ultimate 100% wood series windows. Okay, do I have a second? All in favor? Aye, and passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Incredibly detailed, and
Exciting.
sorry, I just want to go back to one thing. We do, for the solar that is in this plan, That is conditional. We need to amend the design guidelines to formally be able to allow that. So do we need to retake the vote? So
I'm
that's-
not sure that's actually accurate, Chairman, because we've already approved solar panels on another project.
Okay.
I mean, I, for one, am comfortable.
I could not be in
Yeah.
more favor.
I-
I just want to make sure that it is perfectly laid out. for
I
them.
think it is possible to approve this
Case by case.
and to then amend the guidelines more clearly, not to preclude a passing of this.
I agree with that.
application, I agree with you. We should have a more formal, sort of comprehensive position as a community.
Yeah.
But in the short term, I just wouldn't want to see this held up.
Couldn't agree more. So we'll work on that after.
glad.
But thank you guys for your detailed plans. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
If there's any public comment. Okay, moving on to item 5, 15 Summit Road.
Would you want this additional?
Oh, I have a copy, but thank you very much.
But it is beautiful, thank
Thank
you.
you so
Truly,
much.
I appreciate the detail and thoughtful into that all.
We have structural, we have like more, we have real architecture.
Isn't that
Gosh,
amazing?
I was blown away.
Bless-
Truly.
Yeah, we have. This is something they didn't need to see.
And
Said-
then
Thank you.
the
Heather.
new Blackstone pathways.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phenomenally.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
Okay.
Good evening.
Pleasure.
Oh.
Would you like a spare for comment?
Sure.
Because I know you're missing members, right?
Yes, we are.
Pass that along to them.
Yeah.
Thank
Do
you
you
very
need more
much.
than that?
Oh, no, I think we're all set. Greatly appreciate it. Well, you're welcome to join us up here if you'd like, or others
Sure.
presenting,
I
but
wanna, I have something to present, so
whenever you're ready.
thank you. My name is Conrad Roncati. I've been before, this group before, and I've been before this group also with this property. Back in 2019, I owned the house at 15 Summit, and I came before the bar to present my plan for the renovation of the home. I started and then stopped. COVID hit. The project was put on hold. I also own 76 Summit and still own 76 Summit up the street. We did a substantial renovation of that property also. I'm an architect in New York, in addition to being the owner previous owner of 15 Summit. I sold the house to a family from New Jersey, very close friends of mine, and we have embarked now on the actual in-earnest renovation of the house. I'm happy to report for this board that whatever I was planning to do, which I would consider appropriate and great, the current owners are going above and beyond that. So the restoration of the entire house, inside and out, including removing a glass and steel canopy that was over the front door that you can't see from the street, went out for a 3-month piece-by-piece restoration. Instead of replacing it or trying to paint it in place, it was actually removed from the house. Same with exterior lighting that we have. We
And the
have-
weather vane, I believe. no?
The weather vane is currently on
Attention.
vacation in Rhode Island.
Come back.
At a specialty company that it's gonna take 10 months to have
So
that
exciting.
restored. So I think it's an FW Fisk. It was
Who's the sculptor?
that was the company that made the weather vane. I was able to find that, and I found somebody who actually had exact die made for the north, south, east, west components that are steel and were rusted, but he has the exact tool and die to actually recreate those pieces.
Did I also hear that there's some Zuber wallpaper that you found
Yes.
endless rolls of the same?
So
I've never seen it before.
yeah,
I like
so
Neo-colonial Zuber.
we have in the dining room there was a Zuber wallpaper that depicted a scene called Scenes from America. That was originally painted by a French artist in 1852. Woodcut blocks were made to actually fabricate the wall covering. You can still buy it new today with the same blocks carved in 1852. It's quite fascinating. We tried to restore it, or at least the first steps, but unfortunately there was water damage from before I even acquired the property. And somebody, in an effort to preserve the wallpaper years ago, had varnished it. And the varnish saturated the paper, and that eventually,
Brittle.
made the paper brittle. So we were unable to remove it for a restoration. So
How great you could resource it. And
so yes, this is a great example of my friend and now client. We could have purchased brand new paper. They wanted to put the same paper back. But lamented the fact that the color would be a little bit different than a period paper from the 1920s when that one was installed. And the images aren't as crisp because the blocks have been used for another 100 years.
sure.
So we actually found a set of
Right,
the
this is
entire scenes rolled up from 1920s that have been in storage ever since. My client purchased that and eventually will be restoring that,
brilliant.
replacing that into
sleuthing.
that.
Did,
Yeah.
did you do this, or who?
I did. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So all the windows are being remade, custom, with sash weights, all original, exactly replicating, but brand new. So we're spending a lot of energy and dollars to get that done. But everything about the house is going better than what I would have been able to do. My client's looking at a 30, 40 year down the road for a house for his family, and he's approaching it that way. We're here this evening to talk about two areas of interest. One is the landscape. We've retained Janice Parker, renowned landscape architect and somebody I'm very impressed with, to develop a landscape plan for the property. I would describe it, and I'm not going to try to do her job, but what we have come up with is a plan that follows the original concept in the original plan. We have a long driveway, we're not replacing it, a parking forecourt in the front, we have a terrace on the lake side. All of those things remain. They're just getting revisited, reworked, embellished, and I'll let Janice explain. But I would describe this very much like the house. We're putting it back and putting it back the way it was or better than when we found it. There's really nothing about the landscape that is entirely different than the original concept. The other reason we're here is to discuss an idea to do a small gatehouse structure closer to Summit Road, about 50 feet in from the roadway. The reason we're considering this is there was first an idea to have a gate, some columns, a gate to signify the entrance to the driveway. Then we met with Orange Rockland, or Rockland Electric, and we originally had electric service that went underground from the street all the way to the house. But the electric company told us that they wouldn't go more than 75 or 100 feet into the property with new service. They would ask us to come then above ground with a CT cabinet, a big metal cabinet, and the electric meter. From there, we could go back underground all the way to the house. So I was thinking about the idea of this large electric box, the meter, gate equipment, a gate, columns. And we also had a need for an electric generator. This will be a part-time residence for this family. They're not going to be here constantly, but during a storm, they don't live far in Saddle River, but having the power go off and plumbing, etc., would be a problem. And we were having difficulty locating a generator in and around the house. And the reason is that the topography is challenging, the driveway, the terraces, and the public spaces that we're using are all in the areas where you would normally locate the generator. By putting the generator down at the power entrance point, we can backfeed the power from the area where this CT cabinet comes up out of the ground. But thinking about a generator, gate equipment, the electric service box and the meter, the idea was born to create a very small gatehouse and gate structure about 50 feet in from Summit Road. And in that little structure, which would replicate the aesthetic of the house, the stone and the slate roof, we could locate our generator. The generator would now be indoor. The chimney that I show in the rendering on the side would contain the flue for that, so it would all be neatly tucked in. It would knock down the sound because it would be insulated from inside. We would be using a propane generator, so it's not as loud as.
You can have a propane generator inside of a structure
As
that,
long
If
as you're
it's not
venting it to the
occupied and
outside.
properly vented.
I see.
So I see it more as a architectural folly in a way. It's scaled down.
Can I interrupt just to say,
Yes, please.
on page, whatever this is, they're not paginate,
Yes.
but inside, there's a much soberer and more handsome iteration of this. It's much less theatrical.
So-
There's a lot of falderal here, which
Right.
I think is
So-
dangerous.
So this drawing was a sketch that we did that was supposed to be internal. This was to explain to the client the idea to get them kind of excited about it
Right.
and explain what the thought process was. We're here on a very short notice to present to you. Wanted to bring the drawing that we created because it's by and large what we were considering. But then Janice and Tyler were able to take my
So this is
concept.
subsequent, oh,
Yeah, this came afterwards. This is all landscape.
because this is much more satisfying to my eye.
Well, it's also more integrated into the landscape because I hadn't developed it to that point.
Well, two things.
This sketch, I was just
So the
first shot.
Right, so the peak of it, the copper business that's a little Dizium up here on the top. There's a lot of extra ingredients that have nothing to do with the architecture of the house. This is hewing the angling of the of the roof, feels much more in keeping with the house.
Right.
I think there's probably a halfway medium in terms of the gate. This is a little Citizen Kane, a little bit florid. This one looks a little too modern.
So
But-
it's somewhere in between.
Somewhere in
And
between,
The
maybe.
reason is that for Janice and her team, I created a Revit model, which is this bottom right-hand corner. Actually, it was a SketchUp model. I gave them this, which was a far more simplified version on Friday of last week. And they were able to take it and put it into their Lumion rendering system. But the reason why it looks simplified in their drawing is because they were working from this very kind of graphic and
I
simplified
mean,
3D model that I created.
right, in all honesty, I would look really carefully at some of the roof lines, especially the tower and the simplicity thereof, and really take my cues from that. I mean, even the second iteration has a bit of falderal on the top with that squared off thing and then the small thing.
Yeah.
That to me feels fussy. If you're building something that's new with a major historic house like this, I think the onus is on you to go no further. I mean, hew to the level of kind of gesture that the original building is giving, and don't push it too hard, lest you end up looking kind of Epcot, you know?
I
In all
appreciate
honesty,
that.
but-
And one of the other issues here is that I am aware of the setback requirements for a structure. I searched very hard today to find a different set of setback rules for accessory structures and could not find them.
They don't exist.
Okay, so I looked hard for no reason. But I'm looking at a front yard setback here of 50 feet, where 75 is typically required. Of course, we're talking about two primary structure like a house. This is really a gatehouse. And then I have 18 feet to our right side property line where 50 feet is required. But again, these are small structures, incidental, accessory, and I spoke with John about this. If I need to go to the board to have a variance for side yard setback. One of the other benefits here, and you can see it in this blow-up plan on the handout I just gave you, is just beyond the gatehouse and gate is a visitor parking field. It's not very large, but we're very tight up by the house. There's not a lot of room because the house, the forecourt, parking forecourt, and then the hill. So we're very, very tight. So we wanted to maintain this area for parking. I could move the gatehouse back, but I thought it would be appreciated if the gatehouse provided some screening and buffering to this parking field. Not that it's incredibly large, but just thought it'd be nice to have the parking inside the gate and screened and not outside the gate and visible from the
I
neighbor.
think that's thoughtful. We, of course, would have to recommend you to
Right.
And the fact, well, that it's doing double duty, that it has the generator in, I mean, it's covering, it's,
noise,
Solved a lot of
yeah.
problems.
it's solving so many problems
I
that
think-
you can make a case.
I think the feedback too on matching the roof line on the existing house is solid feedback. Especially with the grand homes here, just to mimic that beautiful architecture that drew us to it in the first place, I think does it a service. I don't know if on the smaller one, I think we could, maybe that's.
I
happy
agree,
medium
I
to
totally
leave
agree.
the
I was
copper.
just looking at this
Yeah.
new, that
the
to
new
me is
rendering.
perfect.
Uh-huh.
You know, the one finial, I think actually is nice.
Yeah.
I think it's this
The four that
prong.
really, and the
Yeah.
flatness.
That's throwing you off. Because the tower and the current house has one finial that has then the
Oh, it does
weather
have-
vane
The
on it.
weather vane, right,
Right.
right. So then, no,
So-
I totally agree. The smaller one is much handsomer.
I was driving home, the word folly. My design architect in my office, I did a very rough sketch. And then he produced that. It's just.
And the only other thing that occurs to me, and so there's a lot of stone rustication on the main building, I think the entire bottom, it's got a high rustication, right? So you could very easily make a case that this should all be stone. I would have thought it might be interesting to see some kind of interesting vernaculars from the 19th century where you could bring in a little bit of a couple of
Right.
gestures of brickwork just to tie the whole thing together. Maybe still have it be largely stone because these are small buildings.
Yeah,
That's on the chimney.
Yeah, or yeah,
Maybe in the chimney.
And even
also
possibly
on the
over
right
the-
side, in the rendering, you see how I pulled the wall out from the structure. So I wanted to make sure that the stone was up high. It's also, it's only 9 feet to the roof line, and I didn't want to make them larger. I think if it was larger scaled, we could do the stone followed by brick and then the roof. But I
right.
think it just starts
Be
to
too many
scale it up.
ingredients, right? I hear you.
But I like the idea of blending it into the chimney. We could try that.
Definitely. I think it'd be a nice way to incorporate original structure.
And then the only other thing is I don't know how intended this is as a formal landscape plan or not, but it does feel a little bit institutional, kind of like mid-19th century.
I'd like to talk.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
We'll
So
start
that's,
fresh on that.
that's kind of my part of this, which
Yeah.
was intro, and then talking about the genesis and the idea and the problems and how we felt that we solved them. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna let Janice to talk about her plan
Sure.
and concept in more.
So, no, I'm good, thank you. So, my name is Janice Parker. And I work with the Institute of Classical Art and Architecture, and one of my lectures and one of my fondest passions is the turn of the last century first women landscape architects, and I've been blessed in my career to be able to redo some Ellen Biddle Shipman work and some Natalie Flanders, and I'm showing some of those in this in examples. I adore historical, I mean, the whole thing to me, it's like My Secret Garden, the book, right? You find this old landscape that's really, at this point, very degraded, and how do you bring it back and make it usable for your client and stay to it? So, just to speak to the renderings, there is nothing good about plants in the 3D rendering program. There's only bad.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
And it is just awful. You can do houses pretty well. The surfaces, the colors, what we did in the rendering was literally done over the weekend in between Tyler's brother's wedding, and putting it together. So the exact feel of it, you'll never get with Lumion.
Yeah.
So it's a love-hate relationship
Sure.
I have with it. But the overall thought about this house is that the front is the back is the front, the sides are strange. The house kind of knows what its front and back is. And in this house, you arrive at what feels like, and it's clearly the front, all the views are here, but the front's back here and it's dug into the hill. And my hat is off to everybody in Tuxedo Park for the grading that is going on around the houses here. It's really very challenging, right? To make sure that everything works and drains well and looks right. And it's also, you have an enormous amount of deer pressure, thus the lush boxwoods. The deer pressure is enormous, and the plants look it. And so, the goal is to get something lush and rich, which they would have had, when this was built. So the driveway is really staying the same, but we're doing sort of an obelisk shape, a front entry court with some plants in front of the house, and also at the grade level, still plenty of room to come down here. There are some marvelous parts of the extended linear front terrace now. We are thinking, if they're going to be agreeable to it, that it would be in a soft gravel.
Oh,
Something very simple. The way that the walls are rendered is just the rendering program. These would either be the brick walls or the stone walls, all of that styling still to be established. This is a very small wall because it's actually quite level right here. It's a very small wall, and basically they can come down the side of the house, which is not that steep from the front. Walk through some pretty gardens. This is the kitchen. Walk through some pretty gardens. There'll be a little bit more of a shade garden. And then we researched Clarence Fowler, and this is very certain the feel of that relaxed four-square parterre kind of planting, right? So these would be quadrants, maybe right under this big tree, just be ferns and things. You come around to this staircase and to this gravel courtyard with a center view at the lake, which is gorgeous. Reinstating what was once a lily pond and moving it over to the central part of the terrace. And then this is a simple gravel pad with some bleach lindens. And then this is an original water feature, which is in decent shape. So it had a large pool at the top. You can still see all the structures and the pumps are in the ground. It took a waterfall down and it landed in a small basin. So we're suggesting making the basin a little more prominent, a little more beautiful, because it's been played with over the years and lost its story a bit. A lot. Lost the story. The story's gone, but we can get it back.
Yeah.
Bring back the narrative.
We can bring it back. And, we were also thinking that there would be a nice, once you get level and more approach to the house, it would be nice to document that with some trees on either side, because now you have such a long time to get to the house and go through this, that we really want to try to make it clear, even though this is the back, feels like the back of the house, it is the arrival, right? The arrival. And then you can work your way all the way around. Like Tuxedo Park is quite steep, a lot of ledge. But with some small plantings here and getting a level path below what's only a 2-foot wall here, they'll have privacy when they're sitting, but they won't ever block their view from the rest of the house or from people looking up and seeing the house, which I'm sure is one of the things that Tuxedo Park really enjoys, right? Is looking at all these beautiful homes. So I would just try to explain this and work along with you page by page. The survey, this is our landscape render. This is an indication without the rendering, everything in the sepia color is new planting. we're very aware of the deer pressure and the need for native plants and using them in a smart way. There's goods and bads with all of that, right? And we try to create a balance.
Can I ask you a question? Is this nice swooping thing, that's a deer fence that will help protect you as
No.
well, or what is that?
No, that would be a border of panicum,
Okay,
which deer do not live well in grassland.
Yeah.
Right? They don't eat grass. And so that's what Long Island once was all grasslands, and they never had the deer pressure that they have now by taking it out and putting in ornamentals because it doesn't attract the deer. So it would be a border of, panicum is a native grass. It ends up at about 18 inches high. It moves in the wind very nicely. Gets cut down at any time if it's bothering anyone, but gets cut down in the winter, comes back with beautiful fall color, and it's a native. And so it would create, I think you get a very suburban feeling when you take lawn all the way to a property line. What has that got to do with anything, right? Or as my grandmother would say, with the price of beef. So, you want to create a beautiful atmosphere, sanctuary, a landscape that holds you, and the
I think
property
that's
lines don't
breathtaking,
necessarily do it.
that detail, that's,
And we do that a lot, and we do it with plugs. It's not expensive. And so therefore you don't always see, if you do it with plants, you'll always see separate plants. If you do it with plugs, within a year, it's a homogeneous
even in a
grouping.
year, wow. You may be
Good
under,
old Piet Oldo from the High Line taught us all a
Oh,
little
totally.
something.
I will say this, and take it for what it's worth. You may be underestimating how ravenous our deer are. I mean, they, like, there are things like forsythias, like, they don't eat that. They do when they're,
I
they
can
will
see
eat,
it, yeah.
honestly, they will eat anything.
Yeah, they will.
But-
The deer pressure is enormous. We do a lot of work in the Hamptons and the lower Westchester and Fairfield. It's enormous everywhere. It's a real problem, and it's, it's a problem that unfortunately has many agencies divided, from the DEC to
Sure,
the,
sure.
there's been trying to find solutions for it in Southampton forever. It's very challenging. Very, very challenging.
But what a beautiful detail that panicum.
It's to soften it. It's also, if you look, and I'm afraid about what the one is labeled, this is not possible to really have. This would be a shade loving grass, or a Carex, which is the Carex pennsylvanica, which looks nice all the time, keeps out weeds. This would be like a shade garden, right? It's got a beautiful ledge. The big overhead trees, it should just be shade. That's all. Very sweet. Right now, there's an enormous amount of push of just invasives and mess coming this way, and it would be nice to clean that out, punctuate it, and then leave the trees that are in good shape and high enough to avoid the deer.
Those
Yeah.
are existing garden pathways that you
Yes. Well, they're existing, and some of them have cheek walls that have fallen, and caved in and moved, and stairs that have caved in and moved. So they're there. We're not intending to move them, but at the same time, they're very awkward. And so these swoops of grass are intending to soften them, right? So that it may go at an angle, but when you're walking through, there'll be a curve, right, to soften it. With the grades, to go with the grades. And I think over time, all of these grades throughout Tuxedo Park have eroded enormously. It's almost no topsoil there. The runoff, just the sheet flow has just taken everything away. And between the deer and that and the turkeys and everything, you've got, it's a problem with these steep slopes. What are you going to be left with? What is it going to look like? How are you going to revegetate it in a way that can withstand the wildlife that's here? It's a puzzle, right? So we work with that condition, unfortunately, all the time, And my hat is off to the original builders who decided that these steep slopes was not going to phase them
Superhuman.
whatsoever, without backhoes, and I mean it's phenomenal. I mean it's actually, that is the spirit of the place, right? Come in here and do it, right?
Can I
So
ask one-
I'm
one-
trying not to suburbanize it. It does, I mean, landscape architects excel at suburbanization. I won't say we don't, but we work very hard against that. So the Lumion rendering is not our the way that it comes off is not our point of
Well,
view.
it paints with broad strokes, right? It's a whole field.
It just repeats a shape.
Yeah,
Terrible.
right. Can I ask one question, Janice?
Of course.
So there are a couple little squares, and they're distributed. There are three of them right around the upper sort of
Yes.
apex of the
So
triangle there.
if you go to the back of the package.
Yeah.
I think these landscapes were in the classic way dotted with features. With landscape.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. So those are plinths for sculpture, right?
Well, no, those are sculptures. So on this last page.
No, the
here-
squares I'm saying are meant to
Yeah.
be plinths for sculpture,
location.
right?
So on this page here, this is Beatrix Farrand from the turn of the last century, the first, one of the founders of the American Society of Landscape Architecture. This is a lovely ornament, the garden ornament that she does in Dunbarton House. It struck me 30 years ago. It's just divine. But the proportions are so different now. So we create this by using long shadow plinth and urns, simple iron. And what it usually is someone says, we're gonna get sculpture. Everyone's gonna. They don't get sculpture. Sculpture's expensive and hard to find and takes years and you really have to think about it. So this is not expensive and it's a garden vignette and it looks beautiful and very often they leave it. And it looks absolutely lovely. We don't plant the urn because they're not wide enough to put lush plants in and then you have to try to snake irrigation up. And will they replace these? Possibly with a Botero someday, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but, you know, there are just lovely things that you can have. And when you're in this kind of, I'm not kidding myself, this is a deer pressure, these are the woods, this is the shade, this is steep. If we put a lot of new topsoil nutrients in, they'll wash off. How do we make what's there really beautiful, right? And wildlife proof. And also, you know, I feel that when you've done this kind of restoration of a home and you move in, you should be able to take your morning coffee or your evening wine and take a walk around your property and love everything you see, right? From the view to this to that. So no, we don't have any views back here, but why not take a walk, right? It's there. Is it landscapable? Yeah, to a degree, but it certainly can be beautified and it can be protected, right? So that's the goal, and we've shown examples. I'll just try to stay up with you. So again, the Lumion rendering has its faults, but the thought is that you're arriving in a lush landscape. You're not going to arrive at just come up the hill and just see these buildings. They'll be softened, they'll be lush, you know. And I think we can achieve that even with the deer pressure. And so that's, as we continue up, the material for the garden, obviously the stonework and the materials are still to be completely determined, but it's showing that we're not doing a massive amount of grading or change. Right now, there's no wall at all.
Proposing for the wall?
For the wall, I mean, I would really bow to Conrad on that, but I'm thinking the rusticated stone.
Yeah, it's gonna be the same
Very
stone
short.
that's all around the base of the house. So
That'd be
those-
beautiful.
those
And it's
retaining walls
down
will
here.
come right into the lanes.
You know,
Like a low terrace wall.
it's a low terrace wall, and then we just want to create a level.
Can I ask one?
Walk
Okay,
below.
sorry to interrupt, Janice. So will that be sort of like a 3-inch veneer? Will it be solid stone, or what was
So
your?
the walls that are 2 feet or less
Yeah.
and
In height, you mean?
particular, yes, the ones that come down the side, because we have some large trees here with root structures.
Mhm.
I think those are gonna be loose laid walls when you get to the bottom. Here, we have stone walls, full stone wall, but this lower wall here, and then the one at the back of the parking forecourt,
Mhm.
in the front entry, those will probably be concrete walls, retaining walls, that then will be faced with the same stone.
That's six
And
inch
we-
veneer. A
Oh,
nice
wow,
thick
that's
heavy
really
veneer.
nice, yes.
Yeah, a
You know,
shell.
He would be satisfied with.
Well,
Great.
yeah, I mean, these are big stones,
Nice.
right?
So
So,
the concrete will
So it'll
hold
read
up
as-
nicely,
yeah,
The
yeah.
rest will match.
Great.
You wouldn't know unless you saw it going in. You'd think that they
It
were
sounds
poles.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That
it
sounds
won't
great.
look old if they're not.
Right, right.
You know,
Right.
it just won't. And,
You mentioned that this was a previous lily pad pond that was there that we're replacing?
there was a lily pond in the other location.
Okay, so we're moving that and picking it up to there, and then this is a new kind of fountain, or what is that?
It's just it makes a green room. It's some clipped linden trees with a beautiful stone table. It just creates another outdoor room.
The actual water features.
I'm referring to the.
Oh, the-
water.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is gonna be, with lilies, planted with
Beautiful.
lilies, yeah. And it will only be 18 inches deep. It won't need a fence.
It's not a
Um,
pool.
It's not a pool.
Right.
It will have, and I have an example of one we did, it will have a biofilter. So it won't have any kind of, because the plants need to live. And there'll probably be small fish to keep the water clean. And the biofilter works very, very well. So the thing is, there are only certain, this is one, it's 18 inches deep, has a limestone base. Done at another, this project was by Annette Hoyt Flanders from 1928, and we redid matched brick, balustrades, all kinds of things. And this, the lilies, you use a mix of tropical and hardy, because the tropicals open at night and the hardies open during the day, and so you get this lovely.
Absolutely stunning. I couldn't agree more. Very tuxedo and well done.
Yeah, and no koi. I had a big fight with that koi.
They're messy.
It looks like the Honolulu airport in like 2 days.
Right.
Plus, they make the water really dirty.
And turtles do too, unfortunately.
Box turtles aren't bad.
No, well, out of which are land-based, but I mean, when you put painted turtles in, they can really, you need a good filtration system, I think, but.
A good biofilter does a nice job. And it doesn't hurt the plants, because you need the plants to get nutrients. Honestly, if it gets like pea soup, you just use something called Pylon Black, which dyes the water black. And the blacker the water is, the more reflective it is. And that's an English garden trick, and it doesn't hurt anything,
Perfectly healthy for all the plants.
unless you like pea soup,
Right,
which is an option.
I do.
And so we're showing the befores and afters. And we are, the vernacular that I pulled some Clarence Fowler pictures that he was working with is lovely. It's soft. Go ahead, please.
I'm not sure if we mentioned this clearly. I didn't. We found some historic photos which are copied into this booklet. Clarence Fowler was the original landscape architect. Was president of the American Society. And he was published, and this house won an award from
Amazing.
American Architect magazine for its landscape. But unfortunately, we only have one photo from that time, and it's in this.
Oh, what a treasure.
Isn't it great? And it's all still there. So we're gonna repeat that on the side of the house, those low, softly sloped cheek walls on the stairs, nothing hard and straight, just sloping.
It's very in sense with what was there.
And then I added some pictures. This is a garden we redid where I was lucky enough to have the brick, and the clients and the contractor fought because, people were gonna trip on the brick. And I'm like, but if you take it out, it's not old enough, right?
Agreed.
We can replace it with old brick, but if you take it out, it's not old.
This is so exciting.
So we protected
museum.
this with steel plates and mulch for 3 years,
Wonderful.
and they still complain because it's not that easy to walk on, but it's old. Good.
And you can add sand and things to when it gets slippery.
It's charming. They really minded they would have been.
Just get people to sign a waiver before they walk through your garden.
Well, I think a lot of people are doing this, which is offering like little small ballet shoes or
Mm.
flats when people come to a party if it's outside. Yeah, just simply because, you don't want people twisting their ankle. So, you can do it. So these are other gardens that we have done. So, we're looking to channel Clarence Fowler and then keep it yet today. Right?
These are incredible, Janice. These were other projects of yours.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you've attempted uncovering old pathways, but I'm telling everyone who will listen. We dug out ours and all years of yard waste. So you may get very lucky in trying to find those old bricks again.
I think so. I think that would be wonderful. And this kind of thing, like that's the water feature,
Okay, I see.
you know, and, but this is really the challenge.
Mm.
You know, these are, they were obviously incredibly spry and healthy people because no one needed a rail unless they all had canes. I mean, you know, I have family members who can't walk these. There's just no way they could visit or walk them, you know, so we're gonna have to determine, you know, how to make these very safe. You know, which might just be a little path lighting or just, you know, grandpa doesn't go,
Right.
you know, but, they're, you know,
Well, we've had,
you have,
I think we had the same stonemason because they're almost the same wall. The Fisk man that you mentioned did all of our
Yeah.
metal work as well. We had exceptional luck with repairing them. They just needed a little attention.
now, did you bring the grate up high on the edges? Because
So-
I don't think it was meant to be high
It
like
wasn't.
this.
Ours are built in such a way that there's another, if I can just doodle here, there's another stone on this side, and then this was set up as a planter. So I think over the years, a lot of overgrowth has
Oh.
happened, so you may get lucky and find a second part of this wall here buried in it.
That would make all the difference,
Mhm.
right? Because the
Yes.
grade needs to come up above.
And they set it to be like kind of a planter around it in most of them. So I'd be very surprised if you don't have a second side of that wall. It's, 50-50, but
Do you think
I'm
it
gonna
would be
go
there?
dig right after the meeting.
I'll bring my trowel.
You know, it's,
You never know what you're gonna find in
no,
Tuxedo.
it's very exciting, you know, it's very exciting. And again, this looks very formalized, but
Mhm.
the linden trees don't shave up like that, though I would think that many of my clients would like them to.
I think it's great that you're incorporating that original water feature, and that's gonna be a lovely addition.
I think it's gonna need some more, those old water features too. And then I included some pictures of an Ellen Biddle Shipman garden where we did redo the water features, and it was a heroic effort on the part of the contractor, I have to say. So this was a pool pavilion we restored and some fountains. And we found the archives for it. Her archives are at Cornell, and it was really thrilling. It was really great. So,
I think this is an incredibly thoughtful design.
You can, for the structures though, there are some setbacks and the water board probably first and back to that.
I think it'd be practical at this point. If the board has any strong objections to anything being there, at least let's voice them now. Otherwise, if you submit a formal building permit application, and an update,
Neighbors would have to be notified.
yeah, neighbors will be notified. You can give me updated measurements if you want. Unfortunately, the setbacks apply to all structures, whether it's a secondary or primary. The front yard setback is 75, and the rear and side is 50. If the board supports the project, the BZA will, obviously look at it favorably. We do have to notify the neighbors. Some of the neighbors are a little close. And if you submit your BZA application by the beginning of November, you might go before the BZA at the beginning of December.
That's great.
And you can concurrently come back to this board with updated designs, landscape or architecture.
I would certainly encourage you to apply to the BCA to get the variance. I think we touched a little bit on changing the elevations for the gatehouse a little to kind of match the home. I think if we had an updated version of that for our next meeting, we'd be able to significantly move the needle there.
I think this simplification is important because it's a pretty big secondary structure to add to a historic home. I understand the purpose of it, but I do find it to be quite large for a gatehouse, like, housing it.
Do we have the overall dimensions?
It's the right side, the larger side is 9 by 14.
Okay.
And part of that is the walls are going to be 18 inches thick with just true stone. There's no sheetrock inside. It's a stone.
And I think honestly, just stylistically, its bark may be worse than its bite. I mean, I think just simplifying it, is gonna make a big, big difference. It is a very public thing. It's right on the
Yeah.
road. So when you're doing something new, I think a little less is, I think, gentler is,
And there's precedence too for the size of that outbuilding. We have a very similarly sized
Oh, right, yeah.
one on ours.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fitting.
like a 9x14, the small square.
It's, I mean, maybe 12, but it's the same.
Sure, same,
you know,
same.
general.
It was a little bit about proportion, right? And also having a door big enough to get equipment in, and then
And
that
be able to
started
house the
to
equipment.
size the building.
Gotcha.
Also, the generator itself is, 3 by 3 by 6 or something, so.
And then,
To fit that
Right.
inside.
And your electrical panels on the other side.
I think the tricky thing, and I say this, from seeing lots of examples of Salisbury Park, is to find a gate that does what you need it to do, that's user-friendly, that withdraws, and just, it doesn't scream out stylistically quite as much as maybe the sketch did, but also doesn't look too
Modern.
modern.
Perhaps
Yeah.
there are some other gates in the park that could provide a good source of
Right.
inspiration.
Something that quietly feels in keeping with an historic house without drawing too much attention to itself. It just works. It's a functional thing, but
We're also on a slope in that area, so one of the reasons of having that wall off to the right side in my rendering was to hide a sliding gate behind it.
right.
And I would suggest that when they're here, that gate stays open, and then only when they leave is it closed. It's not something.
And I think it's much better for snow and everything else, right? That
Yeah,
kind of a
just to have
sliding
it
mechanism.
open. And we'll have a
Makes
remote
good sense.
control.
There are some requirements or limitations on fencing. You may want to get a variance, I don't know, but the front yard fence cannot be higher than 4 feet unless you get a variance.
Right.
So you may want to consider that 4 feet's a little short for.
If you're already
for a
getting
gate.
a variance, yes, fold that
Just
in.
ask.
maybe.
Yeah.
On the stone wall, you're saying?
Well, the walls
And the
and the gate itself, the
Yeah.
maximum height for a gate or fence is 4 feet in the front yard. You
I'm gonna
can
look at
request-
that. I think 4 feet might be sufficient. We're not looking
Okay.
at great or grandiose.
Okay.
Might be fine.
Ah, I
Even
see.
better. That's going to look very old fashioned,
Excited.
modest scale.
Just a modest,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not connected to deer.
Your point
fencing,
is
right?
well
Yeah.
taken that simplicity can look modern. We
Mhm.
don't want to do that either, so there's
Yeah.
a fine line.
Yeah, just to find that out.
I think for us to move forward, if you could please submit samples of the materials used for the roof choice, the stone being used for the gatehouse,
So
doors
this-
and window specs.
Norm window specs
Doors and
Hmm.
windows.
for the gatehouse.
Yes.
So the stone would be the stone from the house.
Mhm.
The slate is exactly the same that's going on the house, but I'll bring you samples of the.
Okay. If it's already something we've put through, if you just want to email us, that's completely fine.
And the slate was restoration, right, on the roof?
I'm sorry?
The
Replacement?
slate was restoration on the roof, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there
Okay.
restoration?
But also the lanterns, for example, the chimneys
Yeah.
would be new
Yes,
lanterns,
right.
like the specifications, the size, the.
And I think that the
Um,
sketch had maybe 4
Or that I
lanterns.
see. Probably some of the others as well.
Oh, just on the.
Just
Oh,
on
it
the
is.
front facing side.
Yeah.
But just to maybe look carefully at the scale, like 15% smaller, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on a little.
I think the elevations will clear that up.
Will
If we
clear
could
it
have a
up, yeah.
formalized
We'll
version.
give you the elevations
Mhm.
so that you can scale. them.
Great.
Wonderful, thank you. Have you given thought to driveway material choices?
Yes, we have.
Material choices.
The client wants to do a reclaimed bluestone paver at the house itself,
Mhm.
in the forecourt. But the approach, we've been speaking about a gravel, maybe an impregnated gravel with the asphalt
Yeah, but-
below,
Yeah.
because we do have a
For
little
the
bit of
slope.
rise and
Yeah.
slope.
Okay.
So,
Because of the slope, it would be asphalt penetration to the back.
So the bluestone you're talking about would be in this oval, right?
I believe so.
Yes, at the court.
And I assume you're gonna try to find pieces of bluestone that are like 3 inch, but 3 inches thick, or,
Yeah.
okay,
Like a
because
paver,
the
like a
amount of,
Cobblestone.
okay. Oh, I see,
Could be a good
small,
driving court, sort of.
I see, small pieces of bluestone that are very deep, I see. I was thinking,
Yes, if you could please submit samples for that as well, we can.
that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, would be nice.
Yeah.
We were happy that he suggested that.
So they're
That's a
almost
great
deeper
material
than they are
choice.
wide, and
Oh, they
you can
are, yeah.
take a lot of
Like a
use.
cobblestone.
Yeah,
Like a couple.
Yeah.
yeah, great.
We
Great.
still don't wanna bang a snowplow on.
Right,
For sure.
that's great.
And forgive me for not knowing, other than the samples for the gatehouse and perhaps the driveway, it's October. We were hoping maybe before weather gets bad, we might start some of our retaining walls. We want to get some of this heavy work underway, potentially out of way for the winter months. So is it something this board could vote on, the concept of the layout and the
So which one specifically are you referring to?
so all of those retaining walls, we'd really like to start that work this month, the end of this month, starting in November. So we can get a lot of that work out of the way, so it's in place for the winter. We're gonna be excavating the hill, heading down towards Summit Road and Westlake Road, put in new water service and new sanitary lines later this week. And then our entire driveway, so that we're not going through or under any trees, we're bringing in that new electric service. We're gonna follow the path of the driveway. So we're gonna be excavating our driveway. So
Okay.
we're gonna have equipment on site, and the board could consider our landscape plan in form and substance that.
I think, Conrad, unfortunately, we don't have an application, the neighbors haven't been notified. I
Okay,
think if the board had any
Understood.
strong objections, they would have mentioned it, but we need a little more
Formalize
formal.
that for the.
Formalize that, and we have a
November 8th
meeting
meeting.
on November
The
sixth, right?
first, the first Monday.
First
of
Monday.
November.
So if you can get that together to us within the next week or so, the board meets the beginning of November.
There is the absence of a strong objection. I think we can all
Well
agree.
said. I think just clarifying those material choices and formalizing everything, if you're able to get that into us along with the building permit to John, I have no strong objections and we're happy to get going on that. Any other comments? No? Any public comment? Okay, well, we will table this until next meeting and thank you guys for your very thoughtful plan.
Thank you. It's really exciting.
Truly.
Ask me to keep it under 3 hours.
Do our best.
Feedback is, it's
I'll get you
exciting
the-
collaboration.
Thank you for bringing
pleasure.
good works to the community. We
Really.
need you on more properties.
No.
Yes. Truly, we do.
It takes a special client, a very mature client, to not tear out the vibe.
Yeah.
It really does. They're not normal. Most people are just like, oh, so this is what it costs.
It's so
You
exciting.
know, I mean, it's really a mature
Yeah.
mind that says we have to modernize, let's say.
Maturity and romanticism.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
And
a
a willingness
blessing when you, it's really a blessing when you run across it.
Yeah.
Truly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bar application, professional review for invoices and to approve payment. What do we have?
I don't have the vouchers, I don't have the invoices in front of me, I emailed them to everyone last week. Does anybody have any objections, or I could, I don't know what the totals are.
I don't have an objection. I would like to review them before we vote on them.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to look at them?
I'm not sure I saw this.
Sorry.
I don't think I saw them come through either. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, it was over a week and a half ago, so
Okay.
you might.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
I'll resend them out tomorrow, we can look at them at the next meeting.
Let's look back. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
And then for our review of the minutes.
They look good to me.
Desiree's on, so you can speak to her if you like.
Yes.
So our review
Hello.
of the minutes, I just wanted to correct the attendance list for last week. Mayor Citron was in attendance and I didn't see his name noted there.
Oh, wait, okay, I'm sorry about that. I
That's okay.
thought I included
I
that.
believe the week before last, at least the one that I got had the wrong date on it. So just want to make sure that our records are accurate.
October 2nd.
That sounds right, but
Yep,
This date as well.
this date as well, October 13th. What is today?
No.
Today's the 16th, so good eye. So today's needs to be updated to the 16th.
Oh, I see what's printed. I see what, yeah. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
And yes.
Or
it
the-
says it is
there we
the-
go.
October 2nd.
There's a method to this.
Okay. In that case, I'd I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting with those updates. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. And that concludes our meeting this week. Before we wrap up, I'd like to open up to any public comment from those that are still with us on Zoom. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Going once? In that case, I'd like to call this meeting to an end. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.